Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss an interesting article that claims to highlight 6 ongoing problems, some of the biggest problems with Brexit, 6 years out from the fateful referendum in 2016. The reason I find it interesting is because it doesn't actually represent what I would necessarily see as 6 of the biggest problems to solve, but it might represent 6 of the main issues that turn the public off Brexit and moves us away from this self-harming ideology. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, 6 years to the day since the Brexit referendum vote. I don't always do things on anniversaries, but I suppose I should on this occasion. Lots of Brexiteers cheering it along. I say lots. The relatively small number who cheered its progress so loudly that it's basically impossible for them to back down now, unless they're intelligent enough to realise that admitting your mistakes is a strength, not a weakness. Not a lot of them that intelligent. But those of us lamenting the chaos also seem to be marking it. Brexit is not just a Tory ideology. It reflects Tory policies in general, doesn't it? It's been 6 years since the vote. Now, the people who urged us to vote to leave are in government. At the time of urging people to vote for Brexit, they must surely have had a plan for how to manage it. Well, given that 6 years later those same people are still arguing about how to do it, does not exactly inspire confidence. And when I say arguing, I don't mean with Brexit opponents. I don't mean with people like me. I mean with each other. First of all, we weren't going to leave the single market because it would be madness. Then we had to leave the single market. To not do so would be madness. Then Theresa May's deal was the worst deal in history and had to be sunk. Now Brexiteers are telling us that it's our fault that Brexit's so damaging. Oh, it wouldn't have been so damaging if you'd supported Theresa May's deal. We had no say over it. You're the ones who argued and voted against it. They cheered Johnson's tiny little change to May's deal as absolutely brilliant. Oh, revolution. Oh yeah, we can absolutely get behind this. Now even the authors say it's rubbish and needs to be chucked in the bin. But even now, 6 years on, after 6 years of chaos, when you ask them how we should actually manage Brexit, right, you've had 6 years of mistakes, you've fumbled about, you've buggered it all up. 6 years later, what have you learned? What should we do now? What do we do? What's the plan? There's nothing. No response. Not a single person with the power to effect change has ever written down and published their roadmap for Brexit. They're all still flailing in the dark, blaming everyone else for the mess but themselves. But what is the nature of the mess? I was reading this article in The Independent today, and it highlighted what it says are 6 Brexit problems still to be resolved after 6 years. They don't describe them as the 6 biggest technically, but they do say 6 of the biggest. I would still disagree with that with a couple of them. But like I said in the introduction, perhaps they are 6 of the more topical problems. I'll list them briefly before I go over some general thoughts. So they cite food rotting in Britain's fields, surging inflation, British fishermen facing ruin, meltdown at UK airports, a shortage of lorry drivers, and mobile roaming charges making a comeback. All of these are true. All of them are linked to Brexit. All of them are going to carry on. I wouldn't say they were all huge problems though. So if we take the issue of the British fishermen, in the grand scheme of things, this is actually one of the smaller problems of Brexit. I mean, it's disastrous for the individual fishermen and their communities, but in the grand scheme of things, it's one of the smaller ones. And I say this because they represent a very small part of our economy. They definitely do now, but even before Brexit. And the impact isn't felt throughout the whole country. Obviously, it is still a problem that they've been screwed over, and my downgrading of the problem has got nothing to do with the fact that the fishing industry allowed itself to be the poster boys for Brexit. They pushed for Brexit. Not just Brexit, but a hard Brexit. In fact, some of the more prominent loudmouths in the industry are still arguing the problem is that Brexit wasn't hard enough. Hit me harder, harder I say. I get the impression, however, that a less vocal but more numerous representation of the industry have become disillusioned with the entire project. But although it's really bad for fishermen and the communities the industry supports, you don't really feel the impact elsewhere. I mean, what about scientific research or car manufacture? The Brexit impacts on these sectors will be felt way more widely than for fishing. They don't get mentioned in this article. But it could be argued that the fishing industry is a better tool for the cause than, say, car manufacture or especially scientific research, because Brexit's about emotion. It's not about a different way of doing things. Boris Johnson's spokesperson was asked yet again today if the government had carried out an economic impact assessment on Brexit. He couldn't answer the question. The government carries out economic impact assessments for everything, all policies, standard procedure. Of course they're going to do so for the biggest constitutional change for centuries, but they probably haven't. This is because they do not want to face up to the truth. Or more likely, they do not want someone leaking the truth to the media so that we face up to it. Can't leak what doesn't exist. So they probably actually haven't carried out an assessment. This means they are flying blind on everything related to Brexit. Brexit Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg is now arguing for us to blow our own heads off in the name of Brexit. I'll be discussing that in a separate video, probably Saturday, maybe tomorrow. But anyway, the point is that Brexit is all about emotion. So the fishing industry could be a major issue. Like I say, they were used as the poster boys of Brexit. In late 2020, when we were getting to the final stages of our piss-poor trade agreement with the EU, fishing was held up as an example of why we shouldn't agree a closer deal. We got to do it for the fishermen. We're doing it for the fishermen. A stupid statement. Why should we sacrifice the vast majority of our economy for an industry that barely registers on the scale? But we didn't, because we shafted those as well. In fact, we stuffed the fishermen of Britain harder than almost any other industry. It's just that the impact is only felt in some communities because it's a much smaller sector of our economy, not really interlinked. But that emotional attachment is still there. Brexit didn't save the fishermen, it doomed them. So then you think, so why did we take all the pain for the sake of the fishermen if the fishermen have been screwed over worse than anyone? There's a similar thing with mobile roaming charges. I know I'm not much of a traveller, but I don't see that as being one of the biggest problems of Brexit at all. First, it only affects people travelling abroad. If they're travelling abroad on holiday, say, people tend to factor in paying for a load of stuff they wouldn't normally anyway. They spend more on food, excursions than they would at home. So why not using your phone as well? And if it's on business, well, you might get expenses towards it. Maybe not. But if you're trying to travel abroad on business, you've got bigger problems now than extra mobile charges anyway. But it's the emotion again, isn't it? Just because it's not really one of the biggest problems doesn't mean people don't see it as a big problem, because perception is everything in politics. And the Brexiteers scoffed at the idea that mobile companies would bring back roaming charges. Now they're coming back. So with these two, what I would call relatively minor Brexit problems, they are still Brexit problems, but relatively minor. You've got an industry that was supposed to benefit from Brexit, but was crushed by it, and a Brexit lie exposed by the harsh light of reality. Now, the other problems highlighted in the report, I absolutely agree, are massive. Not so much food rotting in the fields. I don't think that's the right way to characterise it, because that can technically be solved by only growing what we can harvest. Farmers are already adapting by doing this. The problem is the fact that we are producing less food than when we need to produce more. You know, with a weaker pound, having to import more food means we're having to spend more on food. I've been keeping an eye on a range of grocery prices this year. There are only 6 products in my list of 31 that have not gone up in price since the start of this year. 2 of them are actually the same because it's a single tin and a 4-pack of tomato soup. The others are Dairy Lee cheese spread, Tesco milk chocolate, and then what's actually gone down in price at the moment, asparagus and red onions. Everything else that I decided is part of my standard basket of goods, yours may be different, has gone up. The greatest increase is by 67% since January. But there are 8 products which have increased by at least 20%. And that's in the space of half a year. They also went up a lot last year as well. I wasn't tracking it last year. And they'll go up more before this year is out. The food price inflation is absolutely crazy. And inflation is going to be a serious issue. This year may be the worst, but don't be fooled by the government saying they're headed in the right direction when it dips next year. It'll dip next year. Oh, it's lower. Oh, it's fine. We're on a trajectory to get rid of it. No, it won't. Not only will it still be way too high, but it'll be higher than other G7 nations as well. The massive problems at airports, also huge. Yes, there are other factors at play here, including COVID, but we are going to see something special once the biometric checks are brought in for non-EU citizens later this year. The impact will not just be for holidaymakers either, or even for business travellers, but haulage, which will also be hit by the double whammy of not only strangulation of traffic flow at our ports, but the lack of lorry drivers. And here's the thing. The more problems we get at our ports, the harder we make it for lorry drivers to do their job, the harder it will be to persuade EU-based lorry drivers to come here. Oh, do you fancy going on a run to Britain? What else have you got? Well, you could go to Copenhagen. Yeah, we'll do that. You know, if we see more non-British lorry drivers staying away, we will struggle to export and import even more. And of these 6 problems highlighted in the Independent, as well as the 2 others I've thrown in, the government have absolutely no plan at all to deal with them. Seriously. It's not just that we have these problems 6 years after the Brexit vote. It's that we have a government who don't know what to do. Not about a single one of them. This is because dealing with the problems would require facing up to them. And they can't do that without exposing themselves as the traitors they are to their country. So happy 6th anniversary of the day when the UK voted to fart itself into oblivion, to piss off people in rubber boats that, well, we still seem to be pissed off at. So that actually didn't help. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.